Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another video at my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be showing you this card kit from Simon Says Stamp. This is the December 2014 card kit. And as you can see, it comes with some embossing powder and embossing ink and a really fun stamp set that I designed specifically for embossing. So I thought today I would show you guys kind of a how-to video on heat embossing. So here are some of the supplies you're going to need to do some heat embossing. If you've seen my videos in the past, these will all be very familiar to you. But if you have never embossed before, I'm going to walk you through it. You first need an embossing powder. Today I'm using Liquid Platinum from Ranger. It comes in the kit. You also need some sort of scratch paper or something to catch the embossing powder as you apply it. You also need a stamp set. This is the Sparkle and Shine stamp set that is included in the kit, but you can buy it separately as well. You'll need some cardstock and also some ink. I'm using some Distress embossing ink and also some Versamark. I'll show you the difference between the two and let you know if one is better than the other. You'll also need some sort of powder tool. This is an EK Success powder tool. This actually is optional. You don't have to use this powder step, but it does make your embossing turn out a little bit better. And then most of all, you'll need a heat gun or a heat tool to melt the embossing powder. I really like this one from Milwaukee. So I'm going to start by prepping my cardstock for the stamp and embossing. I have this Circle Stacks 1 die set from My Favorite Things. And one of the circles fits that large greeting area just perfectly. So I ran this through my die cutting machine twice to cut out 2 circles, one to test each of the different types of ink. Now I'm going to prep my stamps and I'm just letting that outline stamp kind of go back to its natural shape on my work surface. And then I'll use my compact stamp press to pick it up and mount both of those stamps together at the same time. To prep my area for embossing, I'm going to wipe some powder over the top. This is going to take away any moisture from the oils of my hands, and it's also going to cut down on any static cling that would make that embossing powder stick to areas where I have not stamped. You don't have to do this step, but it is really beneficial in the long run. And any powder that's kind of hanging around right now that you can see can be brushed off at the very end. So the first ink I'm using is Tim Holtz Distress embossing ink. I've never used this embossing ink before, so we're going to go ahead and test it out today and see which looks best. So I'm just inking up that stamp, and then I'll turn over that stamp press and position it over my circle and press down and stamp the stamp. Now this ink should be pretty wet and sticky so that the embossing powder will stick. So I'm going to go ahead and lift that up. And now I'll bring in my scratch paper and I'm going to put that underneath the piece here to catch all the embossing powder. I'm holding my embossing piece with some tweezers just because that circle doesn't have any good spots to hold on to. So I'll sprinkle on the embossing powder. Once again, this is Liquid Platinum embossing powder from Ranger. And then I'll go ahead and shake off the excess and tap the back of the cardstock. That helps any powder to come off that's not supposed to be there. So I'm going to set the scratch paper aside since I am going to be embossing one more circle here. But normally I would go ahead and funnel that back into the jar. So I'm taking my heat tool and I'm letting it heat up off to the side, not on my project. And then I'll bring it over to the project and start melting the embossing powder. Now, when you're first learning to emboss, it's best to use a metallic embossing powder because it's the one that will show when it's completely melted the most. So it's kind of hard to see right now. I'm going to go ahead and give you a close-up shot on the next one. But you basically just melt that powder until it turns liquid and shiny and smooth, and then you know that it's completely melted. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this one more time, but this time I'm going to use Versamark ink, doing the same steps. And the first thing I'm doing is cleaning off that stamp, and then I'll be applying that Versamark ink. And I'm just going to apply it liberally all along the back, along the stamp here, just as I did with the previous ink. And then I'll go ahead and stamp that circle. And when I press down on the stamp press, I'm making sure to walk my fingers over the entire surface of that stamp area to make sure that everything gets stamped and I don't have any gaps in my stamped greeting and circle here. So after that's stamped onto the cardstock, I'm going to go ahead and bring over that scratch paper again that has the embossing powder on it. And I'm going to sprinkle more embossing powder onto this new circle. Same steps as that I did before. So I'll sprinkle that on and then tap off the excess. And I want to make sure that any of those areas that have embossing powder stuck to them, that the embossing powder gets tapped off. Looks good. So I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup and funnel that embossing powder back into the jar. This helps reserve any stray embossing powder that I did not use or any leftover that I didn't use. And I'll just tap that with my finger to get it going to get it to go into the jar. Cleaning up my work surface with a baby wipe just to get any spare embossing powder that may have jumped off that scratch paper. And now I'm going to zoom in for you so you can see more closely what it looks like as the embossing powder melts. This is going to give you a really great idea on what to watch for when you're embossing on your own. So I'm going to bring in that heat tool, and it's already warmed up so I can kind of go straight onto my project here. And you'll see it start melting right away. I'm going to tip it in the light here so you can see the shine as it melts. If you've already done a little bit of embossing, your heat tool is at full strength, and so it will melt a little bit faster than it did before. But this is what it should look like when it's completely melted. You always want to stop at this point. You don't want to overheat it because sometimes that will melt the embossing powder into the cardstock. And I'm going to show you an example of that in just a second here. So here's what it looks like with the Versamark ink. Let's go ahead and bring in that one that used the Distress Embossing ink. I don't see a big difference in the two examples here. I think both work equally well for embossing. I haven't tested the Tim Holtz Distress Embossing ink, but I do know that Versamark does stay sticky for quite a while, so you don't have to rush to apply your powder. So I'm going to heat this a little bit more to see what happens if you overheat it. And you'll notice it gets a little splotchy, and it starts to sort of melt into the cardstock, and it loses that raised appearance. So I'm going to run my fingers over the top of this and really test it out and see if it is really flat to the surface, and it most definitely is. The one that was heat set a little bit longer than it needed to be is very flat, whereas the one that was just heat set just till it was melted is raised off the surface. So if you're getting your embossing powder that's looking really flat, try to heat it a less amount of time. So my card base today is made out of the white cardstock in the kit, and it is going to be a square card, 4 1/4. So I'm scoring that at 4 1/4, and then I'm going to do some additional embossing. I'm using the dot stamp from the stamp set, and I'm going to show you what to do when you're embossing on white and you need to keep stamping additional things to emboss. So I like to do it in stages. So I'm going to prep my card base here with my powder tool just to cut back on any static cling and any oils from my hands. And then I'm going to ink up that dot stamp with some Versamark ink. I could have also used the Distress Embossing ink. I think both of them work great, but I just used the Versamark because it was a bigger pad and easier to apply. So I'm going to stamp this first area up here right at the fold of the card. And I just put that blue masking tape there to mask off the back of the card and also to give me an idea of the size of the front of the card. So I'll shake off that excess, and then I'll set the scratch paper and embossing powder aside. And I haven't heat set it yet, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp more dots, and then I will apply some more embossing powder. And then I'll just keep doing this until I'm ready to start heat setting it. And in my case, it was when the area got too big and I couldn't put my stamp press over the top anymore. So I heat set that until everything was melted. Just went over each one of these dots really quickly to make sure it was melted before I moved on. This is the easiest way to do a continuing pattern on white where you can't see the embossing ink or the Versamark when you want to create an embossed pattern. You can also heat set the back of the cardstock a little bit if you get some warping. That helps too. So I just continued stamping, and another thing you could do is you don't have to leave any areas with powder. You could actually go ahead and heat set it as soon as you've applied the embossing powder. It really doesn't matter. It's completely up to you. Just don't be afraid to do some stamping like this where you're not going to be able to see the embossing ink to do your repeat stamping. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this last dot area. I'll just bring that in that last corner and stamp that down. I think this is a really fun stamp to create a background, and it looks even better embossed. I think it's super, super cute and pretty. It kind of reminds me of Kate Spade a little bit. So I'll heat set that with my heat tool until it's melted. And after all of the pattern is embossed and it's cooled down a little bit, I folded down my card, and now I'm applying some foam tape to the back of my embossed circle area. And I'll just peel off those backing strips and then apply it to the center of the card. So that is going to complete today's card. It's super simple and easy. I just wanted to show you some heat embossing and how easy it can be. Please head over to my blog today. I have a blog hop post so you can hop along and see other examples of this card kit in use. And also there's a giveaway to win a prize from Simon Says Stamp. So make sure you head over to my blog. I'll put a link in the top corner where you can click over right now. And thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and let me know in the comments what your experience with heat embossing is. I'll see you guys next time, and thanks for watching.